Imagine an old man sitting quietly in his garden at sunset. The air is soft, golden light falls across his face, and the flowers he planted long ago are in bloom. Yet his eyes carry a certain weight, a sadness not from time itself, but from the people he has allowed too close. After a lifetime of giving, supporting, and loving, he feels strangely empty. Not because of age, not because of what he lost, but because of those who drained more than they gave. Growing older should feel like resting in a garden you've cared for your entire life, a place where peace comes naturally, where each moment feels gentle and full. But just like a garden, the life we experience depends on what we've chosen to nurture and what weeds we've chosen to remove. If the wrong people remain, even the brightest flowers lose their color. This is the quiet truth the Buddha often reminded us of. Peace of mind is precious, but it is also fragile. It is not just built through meditation or solitude. It is deeply shaped by the company you keep, by the conversations you share, by the energy you allow into your home. The people around you are either helping your spirit rise or slowly weighing it down. Think about it. One negative voice can silence a room full of joy. One careless soul can turn a peaceful day into a restless night. And in the later seasons of life, when clarity and calm are more important than ever, we must ask ourselves, who should I keep close, and who is better loved from a distance? Because as the years pass, there are certain types of people that quietly, almost invisibly, take away the joy you've worked so hard to protect. They may not mean harm, yet their presence feels heavy. And unless you recognize them, your final chapters may not carry the peace you deserve. Picture this. You are telling a story from your past, a moment that still brings you joy. But before you can finish, the other person interrupts, shifting the spotlight onto themselves. Again and again, your voice becomes invisible. That is, the self-focused person. They don't always intend cruelty, but their world leaves no room for yours. With time, such relationships leave you feeling small, unheard, unseen. Or think of the thankless one. You prepare a meal, you give your time, you open your heart. But what you receive in return is not gratitude, only silence, or worse, criticism. At first you brush it aside, but eventually your giving begins to feel like a burden. Even the most generous soul needs recognition, not in the form of praise, but in the simple warmth of appreciation. Without it, love dries up like a river starved of rain. And then there are the careless ones, those who leave their responsibilities scattered for others to pick up. They promise to change, but the cycle repeats. Each time you step in, you're carrying a weight that was never yours to hold. Buddhism reminds us, every soul must face the results of its own choices. Protecting others from their lessons doesn't help them grow, it only exhausts you. The list continues. The subtle controller who manipulates with guilt. The overcritical voice who chips away at your confidence. The energy vampire who drains you with endless negativity. And let us not forget the gossip spreaders who fill the air with poison, and the fear inducers who plant seeds of anxiety when what you need most is calm. These are the people that cloud your inner sky. And the truth is, letting go of them is not an act of hatred. It is an act of compassion. Compassion for yourself. Compassion for the peaceful garden you've been cultivating your whole life. So I invite you to reflect. Who in your circle truly nourishes your spirit? And who leaves you feeling smaller, weaker, less alive? The answer may guide you to the very peace you've been searching for. Before we continue with each type in detail, let me pause here. If what you've heard already stirs something within, if you feel a quiet whisper saying, "This message is for me," then I ask you to support this channel by subscribing, by leaving a like, or by sharing this with someone you love. Because that small act plants seeds of wisdom, seeds that might one day bring peace to another person's heart. And that, perhaps, is the greatest gift we can offer. Because what comes next will not only reveal the people who may be stealing your joy, but also show you how to reclaim it. 1. The self-focused. Let me tell you a story. There was once an elderly man who loved to sit with his friends in the park. He carried a lifetime of stories, tales of youth, of mistakes, of lessons that only time can teach. But every time he began to share, one friend would quickly interrupt, twisting the moment into their time story. The laughter, the attention, the space, it was always taken away. Over time, the old man stopped speaking. His voice grew quieter, not because he had nothing to say, but because he felt invisible. This is what it feels like to be around someone who is always self-focused. They don't always intend harm, but they turn every conversation into a mirror reflecting only themselves. Your joys become small in their shadow, your struggles dismissed by their louder tales. And slowly, without even noticing, you begin to feel like your presence doesn't matter. But here's the truth. At this stage in life, your stories, times matter. Your memories, your wisdom, your laughter, they deserve to be heard. The Buddha once said, asterisk, to listen is to give space to another soul. Asterisk, and if the people around you are not offering that space, then they are taking more than they give. Think about it. When you speak from your heart, do they lean in or do they pull away? Do they ask about your day or do they rush to tell you about theirs? Do you walk away feeling lighter or do you walk away carrying the weight of being unseen? A relationship should be like breathing a natural rhythm of giving and receiving. But with a self-focused person, you are always exhaling, never inhaling, always giving, never receiving. And in the later seasons of life, you cannot afford to be surrounded by silence that erases you. You've given too much, endured too much, learned too much to let your voice disappear now. So what do? First, notice. Notice how you feel after each interaction. Do you feel nourished or drained? Do you feel heard or overlooked? Awareness is the first step. Second, set gentle boundaries. You don't need to fight or argue. Simply choose when and how you engage. You can decide, with kindness, that your time and words are too valuable to be wasted on ears that will not listen. And finally, open space for those who truly do listen, because they exist. Friends who hold silence so you can speak. People who lean in, not away. When you find them, cherish them, because those are the souls that water the garden of your spirit. In the end, life is too short to live unseen. If you have someone in your life who always makes everything about themselves, understand this. Their story is not more important than yours. Your voice is not meant to be silenced. And the moment you choose to honor your own presence, you reclaim the dignity and peace you deserve. So ask yourself right now, who in your life truly listens, and who leaves you feeling invisible? The answer may be the beginning of your freedom. 2. The thankless. There was once an old woman who lived her life giving. She raised her children with sacrifice. She helped her neighbors without hesitation, and she always put others before herself. But now, in her later years, she sits at her table alone. The phone rarely rings. And when it does, it is often only when someone needs something. This is the pain of being surrounded by the thankless. It's not that they attack you, or shout at you, or openly wound you. No, their harm is quieter, more subtle. It's in the silence when they forget to say thank you asterisk. It's in the way they take and take, as if your kindness were endless, as if your heart were an ocean that could never run dry. But hearts do run dry. Even the most generous spirit can become weary when love is met only with indifference. The Buddha once taught, Asterisk, just as a candle cannot burn without fire, man cannot live without a spiritual life. Asterisk, and part of that life is the nourishment of gratitude. Without gratitude, the bond between two souls weakens, leaving one to carry the weight alone. Think about this for a moment. Have you ever given your time, your care, your love, and received nothing in return, not even acknowledgement? Did you notice how heavy your chest felt afterward? How something inside you quietly asked, asterisk, am I invisible? Asterisk. This is not selfishness. This is the human need to be seen, to be valued. Now, of course, the Buddha also reminded us, asterisk, give, expecting nothing in return. Asterisk, true generosity is pure when it flows without conditions. But here is the wisdom most people forget. Unconditional giving does not mean unconditional endurance of neglect. Compassion also includes compassion for yourself. If a relationship constantly drains you, if every act of kindness is met with coldness, then you are not practicing true compassion. You are allowing your spirit to be diminished. Imagine a garden again. You water it, you care for it, you pull away the weeds. But if the soil itself refuses to nourish the seeds, would you continue pouring your life into barren ground? Or would you gently step away and find a place where life can truly bloom? The thankless person teaches us a hard but important lesson. Not everyone is ready to receive what you have to give, and not everyone deserves unlimited access to your heart. So, how do you walk this path with wisdom? First, see clearly. Notice who genuinely values your presence and who only remembers you when it is convenient. Second, adjust your giving. It doesn't mean you close your heart. It means you give where it can be received, where gratitude creates a circle of energy that uplifts both souls. And finally, choose peace over exhaustion, because every act of care should leave at least a trace of joy in both hearts, not just in one. At this age, your love is sacred, your kindness is not cheap, and your time is too precious to be wasted on those who treat it like nothing. So let me ask you, who in your life is always reaching out their hands, but never opening their heart? And more importantly, are you ready to release them, so your love can find the soil where it will truly grow? 3. The careless one. There was a man who spent his entire life cleaning up after others. At work, he carried the weight of his colleagues' mistakes. At home, he carried the burden of promises broken by family members. And in his old age, he found himself still carrying as if responsibility were a chain that others gladly hung around his neck. This is what it feels like to live with the careless one. They are not cruel in obvious ways. They smile. They say, asterisk, I'll change. Asterisk, they promise to do better. But the promises are empty, repeated like echoes that never take form. Every burden you remove from their shoulders ends up crushing your own. And here lies the silent danger. When you constantly step in to fix, to cover, to rescue, you deny them the chance to grow. It feels like kindness, but it becomes enabling. It feels like love, but it steals their responsibility to rise. The Buddha once said, asterisk, you yourself must strive. The Buddhas only point the way, asterisk. If even the enlightened one could not walk the path for another, how could you possibly walk it for those who refuse to take a single step? Think of it this way. Imagine carrying a basket of stones. One stone is your own, your duties, your challenges. That is natural. But the careless one keeps tossing stones into your basket until the weight bends your back and breaks your peace. No matter how strong your heart is, no one was meant to carry both lives at once. The inner struggle is this. Compassion tells you to help, but wisdom whispers that real compassion sometimes looks like letting go. Because when you always catch someone who refuses to stand, you teach them that falling has no consequence. So what do? First, notice the cycle. How many times have they said, asterisk, I'll change, asterisk, and how many times have you seen action? Words without action are only smoke. Don't let smoke cloud your vision. Second, return the weight, not with anger, but with clarity. Say, asterisk, this is your responsibility. I cannot walk this path for you. Asterisk. In this way, you give them the chance to step into their own strength. And third, protect your peace. The Buddha also taught that peace begins within. You cannot protect your serenity if you constantly allow others to place their chaos in your hands. Life at this stage is meant for freedom, for lightness, for clarity of heart. It is not meant to be spent cleaning up the same messes, carrying the same burdens, hearing the same hollow promises. So ask yourself, who in your life has made you carry their weight for too long? And more importantly, are you ready to set that weight down so that both of you finally have the chance to walk your own path? 4. The overcritical voice. Have you ever noticed that some voices never seem to rest? Voices that always find a way to tell you you're not enough, you should have done better, you should have been different. Sometimes, these voices come from the outside, from a parent, a partner, a friend, even a colleague. They wear the mask of care, but inside, they cut deeper than we realize. Other times, that voice lives inside us. It's the echo of years of judgment, the internal critic that whispers, "You're not worthy, you don't measure up." And slowly, like water dripping on stone, these words carve away at our confidence. We begin to shrink, to doubt, to carry the weight of someone else's expectations on our shoulders. But here is what Buddhism reminds us. Your true value does not lie in the words others throw at you. It does not shrink when someone criticizes you, and it does not grow when someone praises you. Like the clear sky that remains untouched by passing clouds, your worth is beyond judgment. There's a story the Buddha once told. He held up a handful of leaves and said, "What I have taught is like these few leaves. What I have not taught is like the leaves in the entire forest." The meaning is this. Most of what people say to you is just noise, like the countless leaves that fall and scatter in the wind. Your task is not to collect every leaf, every opinion, every judgment. Your task is to know your own root, your own ground. So, how do we break free from the overcritical voice? First, notice it. Each time a harsh thought arises, pause and breathe. Ask yourself, is this voice speaking truth, or is it repeating an old wound? Often, you'll realize it's not wisdom speaking, it's fear. Second, practice compassion with yourself. If a friend came to you hurting from constant criticism, you would never add to their pain. You would comfort them. You would remind them of their strengths. Why not offer the same kindness to yourself? And finally, remember this: a flower never asks permission to bloom. It doesn't stop shining because someone prefers roses over lilies. It simply exists in its own beauty, in its own truth. You are that flower. Your worth is not a debate to be won or lost, it is your very nature. So the next time the overcritical voice rises up, whether from within or outside, smile gently and let it pass. Like clouds drifting across the sky, let them move on. And return again and again to the quiet strength of knowing you are enough exactly as you are. 5. The subtle controller. There's a certain type of person that almost every one of us has encountered in life. They don't raise their voice. They don't argue openly. Instead, they pull invisible strings with subtle words, threads made of sympathy, guilt, and obligation. I remember a woman named Sarah. She had a kind heart, always willing to help others. But she also had a friend who knew exactly how to use that kindness. Whenever this friend wanted something, she would sigh, lower her tone, and say, asterisk, if you really cared about me, you'd do this. Asterisk. Sarah gave in almost every time, not because she wanted to, but because she felt guilty. Have you ever been there? Agreeing to something not from love, but from fear of disappointing someone? That is the trap of the times. Subtle controller, asterisk. On the surface, it looks like care, like connection. But if we look deeper, it is control. It's a chain, wrapped in velvet, soft on the outside, but still a chain. The Buddha taught that true compassion is never about forcing. True compassion respects freedom, choice, and space. Without wisdom, compassion becomes weakness. And without boundaries, love becomes prison. Think about it. When someone helps you out of guilt, is that really love, or is it fear dressed as kindness? Here's the truth. You have the right to set boundaries. You have the right to say no without feeling like you're a bad person. Because saying no doesn't mean you lack compassion. It means you value both yourself and the other person enough to keep the relationship honest. Sarah eventually realized this. One day, when her friend tried to guilt her again, she gently replied, asterisk, I care about you deeply, but I can't do this right now. Asterisk. At first, it felt uncomfortable. Her heart raced. But then, something shifted. For the first time, she felt free. The subtle controller thrives on your silence. The moment you learn to speak with clarity and kindness, their power fades. So the next time someone tries to bind you with guilt or pity, pause, take a breath, ask yourself, asterisk, am I acting from love or am I acting from fear? Asterisk. If it is love, continue. If it is fear, step back. Remember, true compassion is not about carrying someone else's weight until you collapse. It's about walking together, side by side, with both hearts open. And when you live with compassion guided by wisdom, no one can manipulate you. Because your kindness will no longer be a chain, they will become wings. 6. The energy vampires. Have you ever noticed how some people leave you feeling lighter, inspired, full of life, while others leave you drained, tired, almost as if the air has been sucked out of the room? That second group, those are what many call times energy vampires asterisk. They don't drink blood, they drain something far more precious, your inner light. I remember a man named Daniel. Every time he met his colleague, he felt exhausted. This colleague never shouted, never attacked him directly. Instead, he complained endlessly. About work, about family, about life. Every conversation became a cloud of negativity. At first, Daniel thought, I should listen. That's what a good friend does. But over time, he realized something deeper. The more he listened without boundaries, the more he carried burdens that weren't his. He would go home, sit on the couch, and feel like his spirit had been emptied. Have you experienced that? Someone's constant pessimism pressing down on your heart until your own joy starts fading? The Buddha once taught, asterisk, an unwise friend drags you into darkness, while a wise friend lifts you into light. Asterisk. It doesn't mean we abandon people who suffer. It means we must learn the difference between compassion and self-destruction. Think of your energy like a lamp. If you let someone blow out your flame again and again, who will be left in the dark? But if you guard your flame, if you nourish it, that light can shine on others for years to come. Daniel began to shift. Instead of absorbing every complaint, he started setting gentle boundaries. He would listen for a moment, but then redirect. Asterisk. I hear your struggle. But let's also talk about solutions. What's one step you can take? Asterisk. Sometimes the colleague resisted. Sometimes he complained even more. But Daniel stayed steady. And slowly, he realized He no longer felt drained. His lamp was still burning. Here's the lesson. Energy vampires survive only if you give them unlimited access. Your compassion must be paired with wisdom. It is not unkind to protect your inner light. In fact, it is the most loving thing you can do for yourself and for others. So the next time you meet someone who drains you with constant negativity, pause, breathe. Ask yourself, asterisk, am I helping them rise, or am I letting them pull me down? Asterisk. If your energy is fading, step back. Create space. Protect your inner flame. Because when your light shines strong, you become a source of warmth, not only for yourself, but for everyone around you. And that is how we turn the darkness of negativity into the radiance of wisdom. 7. The gossip spreaders. Have you noticed how a single whisper can disturb the peace of an entire room? One careless word, one rumor, wrapped in curiosity, disguised as just sharing. And suddenly, your heart feels heavy. These are the gossip spreaders. They thrive on stirring noise, on feeding division, on distracting us from the stillness we truly need, especially as we grow older. I once met a woman named Clara. She was in her 60s, a grandmother who loved tending her garden. But every afternoon her neighbor would stop by, not with kindness, not with encouragement, but with endless tales about others who said this, who did that, who couldn't be trusted. At first, Clara listened. She thought, asterisk, it's harmless, just words, asterisk. But slowly, she realized something. Each time she listened, her own heart grew restless. She would sit in her garden, but her mind no longer rested on the flowers. It wandered into suspicion, comparison, unease. Have you felt that before? Where gossip plants seeds of worry in your mind, making you question people you once trusted. The Buddha warned us, asterisk, words can both destroy and heal. When words are true and kind, they can change the world. Asterisk. But gossip is neither true nor kind. It's like drinking salt water, it never quenches thirst. It only leaves you more uneasy. Clara began to see this clearly. She realized that peace in old age isn't just about silence outside, but silence within. So she made a choice. The next time her neighbor arrived with stories, Clara smiled gently and said, asterisk, I don't want to hear what divides. I want to talk about what heals. Asterisk. The neighbor was surprised, maybe even a little offended. But over time, the visits grew fewer, and Clara's garden grew more vibrant than ever, not because the flowers had changed, but because her heart had. Here's the truth. When you let gossip enter your life, you carry noise that doesn't belong to you. When you turn away from it, you give yourself back the gift of clarity. Protect your peace. Choose silence over noise. Choose stillness over stories that don't serve your heart. Because in the quiet, you'll discover a deeper freedom. The freedom of a heart that is untouched by the weight of unnecessary words. 8. The fear inducers. There are people who never stop talking about what could go wrong. They speak of misfortune, of danger, of endless risks waiting around every corner. And if you let their words in too deeply, you'll start to live in their shadow rather than in your own light. I remember an older gentleman named Robert. He had just retired and wanted to spend his days traveling, gardening, and enjoying time with his grandchildren. But one of his closest friends always carried a dark cloud. Whenever Robert shared his plans, the friend would say things like, asterisk, what if you get sick on the trip? Asterisk, or asterisk, at your age, is that really safe? Asterisk. At first, Robert laughed it off. But after a while, those words took root. He began to hesitate. He delayed his trips, skipped opportunities, and slowly his world grew smaller. Not because of reality, but because of fear planted by someone else. Have you experienced that? Where someone else's anxiety becomes your prison. The Buddha once taught, asterisk, fear is the greatest enemy of truth, asterisk. And it's true. Fear robs us of the present moment. It makes us live inside an imagined tomorrow instead of embracing today. Here's the thing. Growing older is not about shrinking back into the shadows of what might happen. It's about walking more freely into the light of what is happening now. Because old age is not meant for fear, it is meant for peace. Robert eventually realized this. One day, when his friend warned him yet again, Robert gently smiled and said, asterisk, I hear your worry, but I choose joy. I choose freedom, asterisk. And with that, he booked his trip. He visited places he had always dreamed of, and more importantly, he carried home a heart that was lighter. You see, the fear inducers can only control you if you give their words power. But when you meet fear with awareness, you take that power back. So the next time someone tries to fill your days with what-ifs, pause. Ask yourself, asterisk, am I living in their fear or am I living in my truth? Asterisk. Let your truth guide you. Let your heart remind you that peace is your birthright. And remember, old age is not a season of fear. It is a season of freedom, of wisdom, and of resting in the light you've carried all your life. Summary of key points and reflective lessons. There are always people who never stop talking about what could go wrong. They speak of misfortune, of danger, of endless risks waiting around every corner. And if you let their words in too deeply, you'll start to live in their shadow instead of walking in your own light. I once knew an older gentleman named Robert. He had just retired, filled with dreams of traveling, gardening, and spending joyful afternoons with his grandchildren. But one of his closest friends always carried a heavy cloud. Whenever Robert shared his plans, the friend would reply with warnings. Asterisk, what if you get sick while traveling? Asterisk, or asterisk, at your age, is that really safe? Asterisk. At first, Robert laughed it off. But slowly, those words planted seeds of doubt. He began to hesitate. He delayed his trips, skipped opportunities, and gradually his world grew smaller not because of reality, but because of fear someone else had placed in his heart. Have you ever felt that? Where another person's anxiety begins to chain your freedom. The Buddha once said, asterisk, fear is the greatest enemy of truth, asterisk. And it's true. Fear steals the present moment. It makes us live inside an imagined tomorrow, while today quietly slips away. Here's the truth. Growing older is not about shrinking back into the shadows of what if. It's about stepping freely into the light of what is. Old age is not meant for fear, it is meant for peace, for wisdom, and for gentle joy. Robert finally realized this. One day, after yet another warning from his friend, he smiled softly and said, asterisk, I hear your worry, but I choose joy. I choose freedom. Asterisk. With that, he booked his long-awaited trip. He traveled to the places he had always dreamed of. And when he returned, he carried something far greater than photographs. He carried a lighter heart, unburdened by fear. That's the lesson. The fear inducers can only control you if you hand them your power. But when you meet fear with awareness, you reclaim your life. So the next time someone tries to fill your days with what-ifs, pause and ask yourself, asterisk, am I living inside their fear, or am I living inside my truth? Asterisk. Because your truth is freedom. Your heart knows peace is your birthright. And remember, aging is not a season of fear. It is a season of freedom, wisdom, and resting in the light you've carried all along. If this message touched you, share it with someone who may need it. And if you've ever seen a loved one live in fear, perhaps this is the reminder they're waiting for. Thank you for staying with me until the end. May you always walk in peace, and may your days be filled with light. If this video spoke to you, feel free to like, share, and follow so these teachings may continue to reach more hearts. The journey doesn't end here. It continues in the quiet choices we make, moment by moment.